Welcome to the second SMA meeting. Before we start, can everyone just please turn off their cell phones? We had some issues last time, so just make sure it's on silent or turn it off completely. Renee's going to talk to you about apparel and working at Heinz Field.
So the survey for apparel is done. It's going to have the polo, the t-shirt, the long sleeve, a hooded sweatshirt, a quarter zip sweatshirt, sweatpants, a zip jacket, a fitted hat, and the car decal. Just working on getting the mock-ups from the person you talked to, so once I get that, we'll send out the order form. And then for working at Heinz Field, I've been contacting Sarah, she's our landmark coordinator. She told me that there might be another training session for us here at the end of the month, but I haven't gotten a solid date yet, so once I find that out, I'll forward it on to you. I know a lot of people wanted to get training, but there hasn't been a training session. Golf outing's on Saturday, 10:30 or 10 o'clock shotgun start, and then 8:30 registration. So if you're already signed up, that's the time you have to be there. Right, see you there.
Just take note of this, especially freshmen. The spring registration meeting is on November 1st. You guys should definitely be there. Upperclassmen, if you guys can attend to assist the freshmen with any questions, that would be appreciated. And the next SMA meeting will be November 6th. Do the faculty have any announcements?
All right, so please help me in welcoming Mr. Ryan Fleischer, who's the Assistant Athletic Director of Compliance at Robert Morris University.
Can we get that picture off? Alright guys, hi everybody. As John said, my name is Ryan Fleischer. I'm the Assistant AD for Compliance at Robert Morris. Don't hold that against me. I know we don't play you guys that much in any sport, but still, I'm not the enemy, and I am here to help guide you guys a little bit toward, no, I'm kidding, not toward the world of compliance. I'm here to trump it up and answer any questions you guys might have. When I do my presentations at the beginning of the year and I put up pictures of all the people that our student athletes need to know, so they need to know where they need to go on campus, I always intentionally leave my picture off of there because I control the presentation. Now I realize I'm on the flip side and I don't control anything, so you'll have to stare at that lovely picture taken under a tree in front of the stadium around Morris. Anyway, this is kind of like a freewheeling thing. I don't have a particular, topic that I want to talk to you guys about. I guess I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background, what I do at Robert Morris, and then I'd like to be interactive. I'd love to hear questions from you guys. I'll answer them to the best of my ability about compliance, about intercollegiate athletics, and working in that industry, about really anything you might want to know. Okay, I'll do my best to answer those. So, all right. First of all, I've actually been working in compliance since I was 18 years old. So I'm assuming almost everybody in here is at least 18 and over, considering you're freshmen here, unless we have any high-achieving students in the audience that are 17 or below. So that's a long time. I'm 29, that's 11 years. I haven't been working exclusively in compliance for 11 years, but my first exposure to it was when I was a freshman at Bucknell University. I worked in the compliance office for all 4 years that I was there. I was basically an intern for 3 different compliance directors. So that just gives you a little bit of insight into what the turnover rate in this profession is. I've read it in articles referenced as the burnout rate. I will positively term it the turnover rate, just so as not to discourage everyone 5 minutes into my talk here. Anyway, after Bucknell and after that 4 years of experience, which was, as an 18-year-old going into college, I had no idea what compliance was. I wasn't going to be a student athlete in college. Never went through, any clearinghouse, NCAA eligibility center type processes when I was in high school. So I had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew that I wanted to work in the athletics department and I had to choose some job on campus, and there was one available in the compliance office. So I said, okay, I'm going to go down and work beside the basketball arena. This must be cool. You know, obviously when I got there, you realize that it's a world that not many people know about. I think a lot of people, when they look at college athletics at any level, whether it's on Saturdays, you know, Notre Dame, you know, 3:30 on NBC, down to, you know, local cable access. I was at a restaurant a couple weeks ago and I saw like Cal PA versus Allegheny, I think, on like a Friday night, and I had no idea that anybody would ever show those teams on television. And I can say that because my mom went to Allegheny, so I'm not insulting the school. But honestly, I think those public displays of intercollegiate athletics are what most people really get a sense of, but they don't really see the inner workings. And compliance is one of those very insulated processes in the world of intercollegiate athletics. There are so many others. There are academics, facilities, you know, event planning, event staffing, everything. And I'm sure you guys are learning quite a bit about, you know, intercollegiate athletics and just athletics management from all standpoints. But all those things that are behind the scenes, and we try to impress upon our student athletes, you know, that there are a lot of people working for you, and we just need a little bit of effort on your part in order for us to do our jobs to make sure that your experience here as a student athlete is the most rewarding experience you can have. As far as compliance work, it can basically be generalized into the NCAA manual is about 400 pages. It was 434 last year. They streamlined it a little bit down to maybe 417. Thanks a lot, NCAA. They're attempting to make it smaller. We'll see what that happens. I was reading an article this morning actually about social media, and you'll notice I go off on a lot of tangents. There's a lot out there. I'm not sure if it's all relevant, but thinking something might be interesting to you. Anyways, I was reading this morning an article about social media policy in the NCAA, and then as it relates to intercollegiate athletics, because a big topic in the news over the last year, I think, has been big-time college programs banning their student athletes from the use of Twitter and the use of Facebook and things like that, or at least banning it during the season. I know Pitt did it, I think under Todd Graham last year. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anyone. There were rumors that Urban Meyer was going to do it. I don't think Paul Chris did anything this year when he came in. But just it's a rampant kind of practice now, especially with college football and basketball teams. And I, along with many other regular responsibilities, I've been put into charge of creating a social media policy at the athletic department of Robert Morris. Found out about it when our general counsel sent me the article that I'm supposed to be reading, and said, hey, this should help you in developing a social media policy that I parenthetically had no idea I was supposed to be writing. Anyway, that's another example of what you can be asked to do in the guise of athletic compliance. So that's just one area that isn't really going to be, you know, enumerated in the NCAA manual, but, you know, because the NCAA has seen fit to kind of overstep its bounds, and that's become a theme with them lately. They are punishing certain student athletes and institutions for missteps in the social media atmosphere. So that's, you know, an aspect where sometimes you have to go outside what I like to call the black letter law of the NCAA, which is what's in the manual, to things that, you know, quite honestly, I've had it admitted to me that there are things that aren't written anywhere that are a rule we have to follow. Just yesterday, literally yesterday, I called the NCAA and they said, oh yeah, you can't see that because that's a staff action, but it actually lets you do this, and it's not a violation. We go, thanks. So there's literally and truly no way that I would have known. And it goes both ways. It goes from something that can help you and something that can hurt you. You can imagine how frustrating that can be. So anyway, that was my tangent off of college experience. After I graduated from Bucknell, I went to Penn State Law School. Wasn't really thinking about compliance work as a job while I was in school. Knew I would like to continue in a career in athletics. Once I graduated, didn't really want to do the whole law firm courtroom attorney deal. I'd rather talk to people like you guys than a judge. I'm sure most people in the room can agree that they'd rather not stand up and have to talk to a judge, whether you would go to law school or in a disciplinary proceeding. Anyway, went there, came out. I'm from Pittsburgh, from outside Pittsburgh originally, about 20 minutes away, and studied for the bar in Pittsburgh, took the bar in Pittsburgh, took the Pennsylvania bar. So during that whole process, which, let me tell you, if you're thinking about law school, think long and hard about it. Not only because of law school, but bar exams just a fun 2.5 months of preparation. Even better, 10 hours over 2 days of actual test taking experience. You can't hear the sarcasm in my voice. It was incredibly trying time. But anyway, that was 4 years ago, and the wounds have healed a little bit. So while I was doing that, I started looking at jobs, because I don't know if you guys remember, most of you, I guess all of you were in high school at that time, or just coming into college. 2008, that was when I graduated, when I passed the bar. That was a terrible time, and the economy almost crashed at that time, and jobs were very hard to come by. I actually, I was trying to find an alternative legal career, which is why I thought, okay, I have all this experience from undergrad. Two of my bosses when I was at Bucknell were actually attorneys. I know the NCAA employs a lot of attorneys, so this might be something for me to look into. And I did. I started interviewing places. People called me up and were like, "Oh, can you come out to this place on Friday or on Saturday?" I was like, "I would, but I have to take the bar exam, so can we wait until next week?" Anyway, I got lucky, got a great job offer at the College William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. Just a very nice small school, Division I athletic department, 23 sports, about 500 student athletes, but kind of a easy transition, I think, to get into the professional environment of compliance. It was a similar school to Bucknell in size and scope and academic, reputation, so I didn't have to worry about, changing what I already knew about NCAA compliance to go to a new school. It wasn't like I was going into, Oklahoma or Nebraska or Ohio State, Miami, Penn State, thank God. I tried to work at Penn State, and I can make fun of it because I went there. I tried to work at Penn State while I was there for law school, and I went down to visit with their assistant AD for compliance, who I think had been there for about 25 years. And if you're friends at Penn State now, and you read things about how their compliance program is so much better and all this, that's a pretty easy statement to make, because when I went there, and this was in the fall of 2007, they had one person running NCAA compliance for that entire university. That is unconscionable to me as someone who works in this profession. I'm one person at Robert Morris. There were two at William & Mary when I was there. But still, I mean, the general rule of thumb is that you have one person for every 6 sports that you have. And everybody acknowledges that compliance is understaffed. But to have a program like Penn State, and I'm not even commenting on just what happened, I'm just talking about controlling that program from an NCAA compliance standpoint in general. It's pretty difficult to defend one person having control over that entire program of about 30 some sports. So anyway, tried to help. They didn't have enough physical space. It's not a joke, which is actually funny, because they didn't have enough physical space to have a law student down there helping them out, especially someone who had experience in it. It just kind of goes to show how different institutions kind of have prioritized these things over the years. So anyway, started William & Mary. I was there for 2.5 years. I was the assistant director of compliance. My boss, again, was an attorney, so we kind of had, a like-minded approach to the compliance world. And really, just having that experience and gaining trust of coaches, things like that, kind of becoming almost an equal as far as splitting duties with the person who's the assistant AD. was a really good experience for me going forward, to the point where after 2.5 years I felt like I was ready to move on and actually run my own department. So being from Pittsburgh, when the opportunity at Robert Morris opened up, I jumped on it, was able to get that job, and I started there June of 2011. It was actually D-Day. I don't know what the anniversary of D-Day. Don't know what that means, but I always remember that. And if anything bad happens at Robert Morris, I'll say, well, you guys could have seen it coming. Hired me on D-Day. So anyway, I've been there for a little over a year now. Things are winding down for me as far as my busy time of year right now. I get maybe about 6 weeks of where I say it's not busy, and then creeps back up again. Contrary to popular belief, Chris was actually in the room the other day when our announcer, I was complaining about someone. We were complaining about the coach or something. Not just me, but some of our sports information people were complaining. And our announcer, who was doing the field hockey game, goes, "Well, you don't have to work that hard in the summer, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to say that that's true. We're not on a high school schedule where everybody just goes away for the summer, and I just, I'm not going to my lake house or anything like that. I'm sitting there every day, working for the coming year. So anyway, I'm looking forward to things coming down a little bit for me before everything ramps back up at the semester break. So it's a long-winded explanation of who I am and how I got to where I am. I'd like a lot better if somebody gave me an interesting question now to go off of, so I don't have to talk about myself. Yeah.
My question is, if one of us were to do an internship in a compliance department, I'm curious what skills you think we would develop from working in the compliance department.
Sure. What skills you would develop from working there, or what skills you need to have?
Both.
Yeah. First of all, okay, I'll say this. You'll develop the skills that you should have, or that will help you get the position in the first place. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The first and best thing I can really say in order to distinguish yourself is to be a good writer. You might think that's a little strange in an area where you're typically just looking at rules and giving interpretations to coaches and things like that. But to be honest, most of my communication is in, I'd like it to be in writing. I mean, I'm an attorney, so I want everything to be in writing, and I want to protect myself and things like that. And I don't know if our coaches are just not listening to me or they're smart. I'd like to think the latter, but I feel like it's a combination. They always call me or stop by and ask quick question. I can't get them to write a question to me, so I can't give them a written answer back. And I should tell them that it works on both ends. If they want a written answer, they can say, "Oh, Ryan told me I could do this, and here's the proof." But I'm not going to tell them. So anyway, writing is very important. One of the reasons I am busy right now is because I'm working on waivers and things like that for the NCAA. There are a lot of issues where it's not even the fault of a kid or a coach or the institution or anything like that, but where a rule doesn't let you do something, so you have to find a way. And that's one of the things I really try to do, is I really try to find a way to allow something, or to get something approved that wouldn't otherwise be approved under the rules. So basically I have to write and be pretty adept at written advocacy of your position, your, for lack of a better word, client. When you send something like that out to the NCAA, that's something that I think really expresses your knowledge of the rules and the way that you can apply those rules to a given situation. And if you can do that as someone who's an intern, it's going to really set you apart. It's going to make people, when I look at things, I've always been this way, and I'm a little bit of a writing snob. Like when someone writes an email or writes a paper for me or something like that, and I see errors, I'm like, you're gonna have to go a little bit further to make up for that. And I realize that might be a little harsh on my part, but it's something that I really, really pride myself in. I think others should take pride in as well. So that's a huge skill. Second, as an intern, you're going to really develop critical thinking and analysis skills. Like a lot of jobs that require you to look at a problem, a real world problem, and then look at a set of rules or regulations and apply those things together. Something you should have going in. I know a lot of people always say like critical thinking, you know, nobody ever really defines that. What it means to me, you know, is that you can take something that actually has some kind of pressure, you know, it's critical. I'm taking it literally here. It's something that has some kind of cachet behind it, and you can solve that problem, you know, just through your own ingenuity and working with the rules. And that's another thing. If you can, you know, if you can combine those things and then lay it out in a written format, you know, you're doing pretty good work. You'll learn patience or your limits of patience. That's one thing that I've had to. I think that all compliance directors struggle with, because you're not. I mean, the kids, the 18 to 22-year-old kids, your counterparts who are our student athletes, they don't really give me problems. I have no problem with them. They usually ask questions if they need it. Yeah, they fall asleep in my meetings, but I did, you know. Everybody falls asleep in class. Everybody falls asleep when they're focused on one person. It's going to happen. Plus, I turn the lights on. So, I mean, I make them promise, but I can't really enforce it. Anyway, patience with coaches is a whole different thing. You know, like I said, I'm one person for 23 sports. In reality, it's 18 head coaches or 16 head coaches. Each coach kind of treats you as their own personal compliance director. I'm like, I don't know what you guys think here. You know, you only see me. I'm the only person with compliance beside my name. I don't understand why you think that I have like 15 other people kind of like working with me in my little office to help you guys out. So it's just me. So you can understand how that becomes a little frustrating when someone thinks that you're their personal, you know, their personal advocate for any situation that comes up. And a lot of times I'll get things that aren't even compliance related, and they just want to know if they can do them. And I was like, yeah, I don't care. Like you might want to check with somebody else, because I can't tell you whether you can use the field today, or I can't tell you whether the field is too wet for you to go on it today. That's not, you know, whatever. A lot of times people ask me about NCAA playing rules, which are not in the manual and aren't really my purview. You know, they're like, how big can a logo be on a, actually that is my purview, but they're saying like, somebody asked me how big could the Robert Morris logo be? Not a manufacturer's logo, which is a compliance issue, but how big could the Robert Morris logo be on a certain article of apparel? And I was like, I don't know, as big as you want it to be. I mean, I'm not embroidering the apparel, so I can't talk to the manufacturer. So anyway, patience. That's my diatribe on patience. That's another skill that you should have and will develop. Yeah, so I think those couple things are good. All right, Chris.
Can you take me through what you do on a day-to-day basis, and then what you do these days?
Yeah.
Responsibilities.
Sure. And it's going to differ throughout, for me personally, and then also throughout intercollegiate athletics. You know, on a day-to-day basis, I'm usually coming in the morning. For the most part, I have something I've been working on, so I just go down through my to-do list, and I was like, okay, how much time do I have to prioritize. So I think starting the day, and really throughout all the days, prioritization. You know, like I said, I'm working on things, I'm waiting on things to come in, like these waivers that I have to submit, they aren't all just on me. You know, I have to wait for, you know, letters come in from other schools. I have to wait for things to come in from the eligibility center. So a lot of times it's communicating, knowing how many emails to send someone to actually get them to respond, and not just to annoy them into not responding. It's a very delicate balance, because I'm on the other side as well, and I get annoying. So, but day to day, yes, it's almost not a day-to-day thing, because nowadays, I was thinking about that today, and I told John, you know, about this whole thing. I was like, I know by the end of this meeting, I'm going to have like 15 emails and maybe 5 voicemails and stuff like that. And I get that stuff at night too. You know, when I check my Gmail account on my phone, my personal account, my RMU account comes up as well. And I don't just leave things there. You know, I want to get that off there so it doesn't look like I have an email. So, yeah, last night at 11:30, I was watching the A's game, and I got an email from a women's ice hockey assistant coach. He's like, if you could get this back to me tonight, I'm supposed to know by the morning. I go, so you just asked me today? You didn't call me. He had asked me earlier in the day. I gave him an answer, and then he asked me kind of a follow-up that I got at 11:30 last night. So I'm like sitting on my computer on the NCAA website trying to find an answer. So that's why I think like a day-to-day as far as like, okay, get to the office at 9, what do I do from 9 to 5? It's kind of a difficult question to answer because it really isn't day-to-day anymore. I mean, I see what your question is, but for the most part, you know what you're doing going into the day. On a typical day where I'm not working on like long-term projects, you know, I'll go in and just kind of wait for the phone to ring. You know, wait to answer an email. If I don't have something really that I'm working on, I kind of think of stuff to work on. I'm like, what would optimize our program? What can I get out to coaches? Like Steve, I told him I was going to call him out. Steve Metzler, you know, works with me right now. And what did I have you do? The NLI thing? NLI. Yeah. So your early signing period for the NLI, the National Letter of Intent, is coming up in a couple of weeks. It's the 14th through the 21st of November. And nothing's really changed with that process, but I asked Steve to work on basically an FAQ info sheet for me to distribute to all the coaches for them to know, you know, what they need to do going forward, so it's not, you know, November 13th and 11:30 at night and Ryan, what do I need to do tomorrow? I need to get this kid signed tomorrow, or otherwise he's going to sign somewhere else. I go, okay. So that's what I'm trying to address now, a month earlier, by getting that information out to them. So you know, when I'm not prioritizing, I'm trying to optimize, you know, for lack of a better term. And it's slow going sometimes because I can't always get to the optimization. I'm usually just putting out fires. So, anybody else? Yeah.
Do you recommend getting a law degree or with a regular master's?
Talk about like a master's in sports management or sports administration. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a master's. I just went straight to law school. It's difficult for me to say. At a base level, yes, I recommend the law degree just because of the nature of the work that you do. That's mostly interpretive with what is actually law. I mean, it's organizational law. And I just think the skills, like I was telling him, that you acquire in law school, that you hone in law school, really lend themselves to this type of work. Because the things that you have to do, like I say, when I write waivers and things like that, it's advocating for your client. Try to get the judge, you know, the NCAA, to give you a favorable verdict. I mean, those are my legal analogies, but it's not too many steps away. That being said, I can't really speak to the value of a master's degree because I didn't go. I think it would be great. I think if you get enough education within, within your master's program, to where you're talking about intercollegiate athletics issues and you have exposure to compliance, then I think it's wonderful. I think if you know when you get out of undergrad that you want a job in sports, as I think most of you guys probably do. And that's another thing I was going to say. Seeing this is fantastic. Like, I didn't have this at either of my schools. Robert Morris has a great sports management program, but I don't think they have a program like this or an association like this. So to see this many people in here who are interested and engaged in this, and to really realize that careers in sports aren't just I love sports and I think it would be awesome to make money around sports. Like I've loved sports my entire life, but do I love my job every day? Hell no. It's like any other job. I mean, there are many frustrations, many things you have to overcome in any job. But it's great to know that like what I do, and when I overcome a frustration, it might put somebody on the field, who might help out the team and the school and things like that. Like those are rewarding things. But anyway, I just want to say you guys have a great organization here. I think the Masters, if you find it to be valuable for you and you think it's going to get you in the right place, or if you don't know that you want to go into compliance necessarily. I think it's great. I think the only job really, not the only job, because I think you're finding more and more ADs and upper level administrators in college athletics who have advanced degrees. I think a master's is almost essential, at least a master's. Our athletic director is a doctor. I mean, he's a psychiatrist. He doesn't do that anymore, but that's a non-traditional path to go be an athletic director. To go to med school and then 20 years later go be an AD. I think my path is becoming more and more traditional. Like I said, most compliance directors I know, most that I talk to, are attorneys. A lot of people that work at the NCAA, mostly because they came from campus. They came from the college side. A lot of them are attorneys as well. I think it's just, the nature of the work really, I think law school really benefits you. So that being said, I wouldn't want to discourage anybody, because I think if you don't know that you want to go into compliance, or that you want to go further, or you just want the law degree and you want to work in sports later on, because the law degree in sports, as you guys probably know, can help you not just in intercollegiate athletics, but so many areas down the line. It's not just being a sports agent. Most people, I was talking with a sophomore, Robert Morris, last week, and he's like, my professor sees my resume, and he's like, oh, you want to be a sports agent? I was like, they said the same thing to me. I was like, no. Just because Jerry Maguire came out when I was like a teenager doesn't mean that I want to be a sports agent just because I went to law school and I like sports, okay? There's so many other opportunities. When I said before about discouraging people or scaring people about that path, it was probably the best thing I ever did as far as education. I mean, it sets you up to be able to do so many things in the future. I'm like, the only thing I probably can't do is go be a doctor. Because I'd have to go back to school for like 8 more years. I'm not going to do that. So, anyway, I mean, that's as much as I can really address the whole master's versus law school thing. I wouldn't do both unless you go do a compliance program, because you don't want to go do your master's for 2 years and then work and then go back to law school for 3 years. Like, law school's a good place for where you know that you can work hard, but you don't necessarily know what you want to do. Because you're still going to have a degree when you come out, and you're still going to have a lot of things available to you, including this type of
Just any advice that you could give anybody for looking for internships or practical experiences?
Yeah, I try to be good with this. It's tough sometimes, and a lot of times it's because I find myself sliding back into that Penn State excuse that I don't have the room for you. I've actually told kids that, because I want to help people out. It's just like, my office is about, I don't know, Steve, how big is it? It's not that big. It's like 10 by 10.
Real small.
Real small. Thanks for commenting on my status around the morning. Corner office, not way down. But anyway, it's tiny. Yeah, according to Steve. No, but anyway, I don't want to have, and I don't think anybody that wants to be an intern wants to be sitting like behind my monitor, my computer monitor across the desk from me, working on something, me being like, oh, how's it going, stuff like that. So I try to do well, and with a school that has a sport management program like Robert Morris does, like kids come to me all the time, they're emailing me, I'm like, just keep in contact, I'll let you know. So that's a lesson for everybody. Be persistent. Okay? Persistency shows that you were really interested in the work that you're trying to attain. I had a kid who, right after I started at Robert Morris, he was a friend of a friend in the department. He was going to Georgetown, I think, to do an internship in their compliance office. So he already had something within the area. But he's like, I'd be willing to come in, for like a month and help you out, just whatever you needed. And I was like, dude, I just got here. I have no idea what I need, but sure, come on in. So he came in. I am pre-recruiting calendars, which is something that's important, but something I don't really have time to do. And now he's kept in touch with me for like the last year and a half, and he came in and worked for 3 more weeks this summer. Now he has like a GA position at St. John's in New York for compliance. So like, it isn't just, the kid was great, the kid was very smart. So it's not just because of that, though, it's because of, you personally extending yourself, toward that job, or toward that area. And you know, a lot of times you can work in an area just to cross off your list. You know, like get experience in something, and you know, other than my experience at Bucknell, I had no working experience in compliance before I got here. You know, before I got to this job, I worked in a lot of other things. So, as far as you guys attaining internships with compliance or with college athletic departments in general, or internships in general, you have to be persistent. You have to realize that. I think the perception going in, at least my perception, is that the people who are offering the jobs or who are hiring think that everybody wants to work in sports because it's cool, because it's fun, because it's interesting. So, like, I think the worst thing that you can say, and don't be offended if you've said this already, just let it frame your kind of future experiences. I think the worst thing you can say is, I've always been a really big sports fan. You know, in an interview or something like that, or in inquiry. I've always been a really big sports fan, and I want to, you know, just explore this. I want to work in sports, and I find myself, like when I write things like that, when I was applying to this job, you know, not saying that, because it's true. And I think for a lot of us who are sports fans, and I think most people in this room can attest, you know, that's been like one of the defining characteristics of our identity since we've had conscious thought. I mean, if you're a sports fan, you're a sport fan is fanatic, you know. I mean, so it's hard to say, oh, I just think this would be cool, or for other reasons. You know, I think this would be a rewarding experience for reasons other than I love sports, and I've loved sports ever since I was a kid. You know, but that's something you have to, you know, you have to kind of temper, because you have to distinguish yourself from all the other people out there who are saying I love sports and I have these qualifications. I think you have to trump yourself as someone more unique than just one of the masses of sports fans who think it'd be cool to get paid, also work in that area. So yeah, persistency, just knowing the audience that, you know, your application or your inquiry is going to, knowing who they're looking at. It's becoming more and more prevalent for very high level, highly educated, highly talented people, I'm not including myself, to go into this area. I mean, you look at baseball, you know, general managers who in the past were like former, you know, players, you know, in a lot of ways, and now it's like, you know, Ivy League law school grads, Ivy League business school grads who are like, yeah, I love sports, but I can bring all of this knowledge and experience and intelligence to this area, and, you know, kind of run with it. That, I mean, in that environment, that's competitive. It's extremely competitive. So you have to kind of set yourself apart in another way. And one of those ways is being, you know, persistent with your, you know, communication, being available, being willing to intern for free. Even big organizations now don't have the money, you know, to pay people. You know, it's rare, I think, that we can get even like a GA and give them some kind of stipend or something like that, because I think a lot of institutions aren't able to do that. So you can play to those aspects as well. You know, and it's better for you guys. I mean, there's so many schools in Western Pennsylvania that I think would have these opportunities, or at least would be available for you to seek out the opportunity. But you guys are kind of in a unique situation, because you don't have to, like, say, I'm going to go to Boston for a summer, for a semester, or New York or DC or something like that, have to live just to try to gain that experience for free. You know, so I think take advantage of your surroundings and things like that. And another thing, like, you know, when people contact me, if I don't have something for them, like right now I have Steve and I have a law school, a law student from WVU that comes up to help me 2 days a week. And really, I'm just trying to provide experience for them. It's not even like they help quite a bit. Like especially the guys I have now, they help quite a bit. But a lot of it is me trying to help them and trying to provide them with experience and something to put on their resume. So yeah.
Where do you ultimately see yourself winding up and retiring? What position?
29, does that sound that old?
Where do you see yourself progressing in?
Yeah. All right. I'm not really sure yet. It's a good question. It's a completely valid question.
you know, I think I kind of go back and forth. I waffle a little bit. You know, I think it could be an AD in 10 years, maybe. You know, just have a career like that. You know, Robert Morris is a great place, great athletic department. I think we have good support there from our administration. But, you know, like I said before, with turnover, it's an itinerant life where you have to go where the next job is, and you have to, you know, find the next opportunity, like with anything really, but especially in college athletics, because, you know, if I want to be in Pittsburgh, I mean, there's not that many places around to kind of move up and advance your career. You know, like, if I have to wait until, you know, Steve Peterson retires to try to, you know, in 10 years or whatever, to try to go to Pitt or something like that. And I think those are the types of things you have to think about, because you have to constantly be thinking strategically about your career. So if I do stay in college athletics, I think that's where I'd be moving toward. I'm trying to gain more experience in other aspects of the athletic department, which in a place like Price Slippery Rock or Robert Morris, a smaller institution where you can have more exposure to other offices within the department and across campus. You know, I'm trying to gain exposure to fundraising and athletic development and things like that, because that is such a gigantic part of an athletic director's job. It might be the main part of their job. But that's something I want to get involved with, budgeting, just things like that. But I think the compliance basis is a pretty good baseline for athletic directors, because if you know that, then you kind of know the nuts and bolts of, you know, what your department is doing. So I think that's the path I see in college athletics. I still have, you know, still in my second job. You know, I went straight to grad school and then straight out into the workforce. So, you know, I have other interests also. I like to explore professional athletics. Went to law school for politics on this day of, you know, of the vice presidential debate. That's a massive interest of mine. So, a lot of people, you know, would say that you know, it's kind of a detriment that that I have all those interests, but I would never say that. So I think the path has a lot of forks, but I'm set up pretty well for a career in intercollegiate athletics if I want to keep doing that. So for you guys, if you want that kind of path as an AD or an administrator in college athletics, I think compliance is a great path for you to go to, but I think just anything within the athletic department where you can get an overall sense of how the department works, you know, would really help you, really help out. And you got to start small. Like I said, you know, when I said earlier about giving people experience and having them sit behind the monitor on the desk, that's what I did. You know, I was in a chair across from my boss at Bucknell, like just working on something on my lap, you know, for 4 years while he was working at his desk. So you start small and you just got to keep going. I don't know if that answered your question too well. Everybody else? Nobody's going to ask me about like Miami or UNC or USC or Penn State? Anything? Yeah.
What's the biggest compliance issue you have at Robert Morris?
I think it's a confidentiality agreement before I came here, so I can't tell you completely. Or I could tell you, but I'm not going to. The biggest challenge, you said challenge? Or situation?
Like, is there an issue that's constantly coming up that you find on your desk?
I think the thing I have to kind of expend most time on is kind of annoying, because I think the things that you expend most of your resources and your time on are kind of administrative things that don't really require a lot of brain power, which, you know, if I had another full-time person, you know, I could kind of get somebody who's getting into the business and have them kind of take care of that stuff, and then I can worry more about big picture items like, you know, those battles with the NCAA that I was talking about, or, you know, coming up soon, the NCAA is going to release its publication of proposed legislation for this year. And that's like a massive document where it just compiles all the proposed legislation, you know, the NCAA and its member institutions have put forth, and we kind of have to take all of this that looks like, you know, it looks like a bill, basically, and disseminate all that information in a very kind of digestible way to our coaches. You know, people who write the NCAA are just terrible writers. anybody has a relative or knows anybody at the NCAA, don't tell them I said that, because I still have to call them and I have to answer my questions. But anyway, and I'd probably be terrible right if I was there too, because it's kind of like the restrictions of what you do. But so the administrative things are kind of like an issue that I'd say I have to deal with, like making sure all these forms are signed. So 550 student athletes, everybody has to sign a certain amount of forms, has to have eligibility certified and all these things. Those are things that I'm constantly worried about, just because that's like if you aren't 100% accurate, you're failing. You know, there's no bell curve in that kind of atmosphere. You have to be 100% right. Issues, I mean, things that come up are, you know, a lot of things about what we can do as far as recruiting, when we can call kids, what can we do now? So there's been so many changes in the recruiting rules. Like I heard men's basketball can text after June 15th of a kid's sophomore year. Like, why aren't we able to do that? Can we do that? When can we do that? So things like that, because there are a lot of, like in the manual, there are a lot of things that are broken down by sport to the point where a lot of people are, you know, why don't we just, or we're getting to the point where we're just going to need sport-specific rule books. And I think we're trying to do away with that, because that would be completely burdensome for people like me to go through. So I think questions like that, just eligibility issues, making sure you kind of have to project out, you know, like saying, okay, this kid eligible for this fall. You know, even, I mean, it's not just eligibility issues. You know, I'm not saying that people are bad students. I'm saying, like, sometimes the rules are so finicky that you literally have to be like prescient to know what's coming and to know like what a kid wants to do as far as like their major. Like, you have to anticipate a kid changing his majors. You have to make sure that they're eligible the next semester. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I mean, I hear myself talking about it like during the day. But as far as like just outlining one or two specific issues, there really aren't. I mean, you know, I'm not worried about boosters giving kids things or extra benefits or things like that. I'm worried more about educating people so they don't do that. But you know, if I was somewhere else, if I was at a bigger school, I'd be more worried about that and about monitoring their activities. I think one thing that I'm going to find after reading all these social media articles is I probably should be monitoring people's social media postings and things like that. I don't want to. I feel like you get in a lot more trouble than do good in those things. And you know, I want to think that I want the kids that are supposed to trust me. And that's you had asked earlier too about skills. I don't know if trust can be a skill, sort of a trait or a virtue, but like trustworthiness. But if you don't have that in my position with the coaches and with the kids, like you have no impact, no ability to impact. They have to be able to trust you. So if I'm down there being, you know, the Facebook police or the Twitter police, I don't want to create a Twitter account with 500 student athletes on it because I'd have to break my phone, you know, and my computer, and I lock them. I don't want to do that. You know, so, but that's a thing I think that could be an issue going forward. That might be a big issue going forward because any violation can come out and be, you know, or a kid can just post something and not think it's completely innocent. At least innocent for a 21-year-old. Maybe not necessarily in the vast bounds of society, but you know, that's something that I see and I'm like, oh, that's funny, and I'm gonna have to work on it for the next week. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
How does the regulating of social media and the idea of freedom of speech work together?
I'm glad I've been reading these articles because now I can. My First Amendment class that I took in law school 6 years ago wouldn't really give me all I need to talk about this. But basically, First Amendment protection is predicated upon the regulation coming from a state actor, which means a public institution or the state government or something like that. So, you guys, private, right? You guys public? Yeah. Public. All right. So, basically, Robert Morris is private, and it's hard for me to keep track of all the schools in public private. We all pay a lot of money in tuition, right? So if Slippery Rock's athletic department wanted to restrict use of social media, they would have to be very careful in doing it because it is a public actor. It's seen as a public actor by receiving money from the state government, and students' expression through Facebook and Twitter or anything is protected under the First Amendment. Not that private school students aren't. It's just because it's a private institution, they have a lot more leeway in what they can do. The recommendations from what I've been reading are not for any school to impose a complete ban, just because there would be so much scrutiny that would go on to those bans. But for a public institution to do it, you have to be very careful. The main ways that one of you guys can have their speech restricted, there are no free speech protections on obscenity or on things that could be indicative of a crime, something like that. Or, you don't have freedom of speech to do that. So if you go on Twitter and you're a 20-year-old student athlete or student or whatever, and you're posting pictures of you drinking or drugs. I mean, and I'm not bringing this up from experience, so don't think that's what I'm seeing down there. But I'm saying from anybody, in college or a student athlete, and you're a public school, the school can basically take those expressions and punish you, for them, penalize you for them because you have no freedom of speech rights in those areas. But yeah, just as a general baseline, the public schools have to be a lot more careful with what kind of restrictions they place on Twitter bans or social media bans or something like that than private schools. Anybody else? Yeah.
My name's Tom Cohen, by the way. Ryan, I'm curious, during your 11 years working in the compliance departments, what was your biggest achievement? If you could state one.
Yeah, would you allow me to generalize it just because my achievements have come in a couple, like the ones I consider to be the most are kind of similar.
Yeah.
Mainly it's when there's a challenge like with a kid who's come to school, and I've seen it. I didn't see it so much at William and Mary. I wasn't really involved in this area at now. But when I can get a kid who deserves to go to college, I mean, I think everybody deserves to go to college. I think, there's some areas obviously where, I think everybody picks their college based on what they know they're capable of, what they want, But when I see a kid who kind of needs to be a student athlete, they have the talent to be a student athlete, they need athletic scholarship money to go to college. And the NCAA says because of their system of initial eligibility qualifications, they are not going to be able to play or practice or receive aid in the first year of their college enrollment. They're a kid, it's called a final non-qualifier versus a final qualifier. If you're a non-qualifier, some kids have the means to just stay at school and be a regular student and wait until their sophomore year to be a member of the team. A lot of kids, and I'd say the vast majority of kids that I see who are final non-qualifiers, because I think that kind of means and I don't want to generalize and say that they all came from certain, that they're all urban kids, they're all rural kids, from schools that don't have, a lot of resources, whether it's out in the country or in the city or something like that. But I think you see a higher incidence of non-qualifiers from people that don't necessarily have the independent means to go to college. And when I see that happen, I've worked on it a lot more in the last 3 years. It was actually one of the last cases I had at at William and Mary, that I've done it quite a bit here at Robert Morris. When I can submit a waiver to the NCAA and basically argue to them why the kid was not meeting the standards that they laid out for them, and basically, saying that this kid should be here, you should approve this waiver to allow them to go to school. And when those get approved, and the kid is able to stay and go through school, and I mean, at that point, it's all up to them. It's all up to him or her to create their own path. But for me to have some small role in giving them access, whereas otherwise, you know, and I've heard that, you know, people in the past or other compliance directors wouldn't even, like, kids upon an unqualified is like C, unless they're like a star, you know, and they actually need them. Because compliance people just don't put in the work. And I don't know if I'm unique. I just hear that from some people that they haven't done that before, they haven't had it done for them. But, you know, I remember prior to the rest of my career last year, it was one of the first things I did where, you know, we had a kid, I got to, you know, he was not qualified, I got the waiver approved. His parents came up when they moved him in, and his dad hugged him, you know, because he was like, we wouldn't have been able to, he wouldn't have been in school. He would not have been in school if not for that waiver. And I'm not saying that somebody else couldn't have written it. He couldn't have done it, but like I did. So, and when I see those areas, or when I know that someone's important to a team, or really when someone otherwise wouldn't have been able to go to school, you know, that's what I consider to be like my achievement.
That's awesome. You make a big impact on another person's life.
It makes you feel good about what you do actually has an impact. Because when you're sitting there, you're like, oh, I have to keep track of all the rules for you guys. And a lot of the kids are like, well, I'm not going to screw up. You know, I'm not going to screw up, so thanks, but, you know, you're not really going to have that much of an impact on me. But, like, those freshmen, sometimes you really do. Or even upperclassmen that have issues with you, and that's the kind of, you have to fight for them. So, yeah. Anybody else? Steelers tonight, huh? How many people are, I was going to ask you guys earlier, like, how many people in here from the area? Or vast majority, I'd say, right? Yeah. Steelers fans, everybody's Steelers fans. It's a great sports day. It's a great sports weekend. Four playoff elimination games. Steelers game tonight. Thanks for having me. So I'm just going to go home.
Alright, just a quick recap. For apparel, we'll be getting the mock-ups soon, so we'll be getting the stuff out to everyone as soon as possible. Looking at Hinesfield, if you need any more information on that, you can contact Renee. The golf outing Saturday. Don't forget the spring registration meeting, it's very important, November 1st. And it's in here, correct? Yes. Yes. Alright. And then our next SMA meeting is November 6th, so that's it. Yes, let your car go out, please.